Biden is soaring off to Scotland to be part of a world climate summit, and at the same time, energy prices are soaring here at home. He'll be overseas for Halloween, but people all across America will be suffering through the nightmare of high energy costs. And you say, why are they so high? Well, it's because of policies of this administration. One bad policy after another, driving up the cost of energy. And how bad is it up? Well, the price at the pump now is about $1 a gallon more than it was when Joe Biden took office. And we have a picture here. You can take a look at what the average prices are now, but I know you'll be hearing from other members about how it's a lot higher in some of their states. So prices are much higher now by $1 a gallon than they were when Joe Biden became president. So what does that translate into? Well, it's about $25 every time you fill up your tank. And for a family, for somebody living on a fixed income, that's a pretty big bite and a painful bite out of somebody's paycheck. And that's just the gasoline component of that. That's a 7-year high. We also know that natural gas is now at a 7-year high, and half of the homes in America are heated with natural gas. So all of those people are going to be paying a lot more to heat their homes this winter. So it's really a double gut punch. And you say, what kind of policies could this administration and the Democrats have done to cause all these things? Well, Joe Biden bragged about the fact, day number 1 in office, he killed the Keystone XL pipeline. He then put a moratorium on oil and gas leases on public lands, which affect many of our states. And then he went after Alaska. That's the reason that people are paying so much more for energy. It's these policies. So what's the administration decided to do about it? Astonishingly, they're asking OPEC plus Russia to produce and sell us more energy. Hard to believe, but it's on the White House website. The National Security Advisor put it on the website, asking Russia and OPEC to produce more and sell more energy to America. So right now, today, the United States is using more energy from Vladimir Putin's Russia than we are from Alaska. But this is a huge financial jackpot for Putin's Russia, for Iran, as well as from Saudi Arabia. And for what purpose? Well, to me, it's so that Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi and John Kerry and apparently about 4 plane loads of Democrats can head over to Scotland and wave the white flag of surrender to take us from being a nation that is energy dominant and energy wealthy to a nation of energy weakness and dependence. And now we'll hear from Senator Capito.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for being here today, and I think you're going to hear a lot of similarities that we see across our states. One of the things that is influencing this high price of energy, both at the pump or at your home heating, is the inflation. We've seen inflation go up over 5.4%, which is the most it's gone up in 13 years. Now, many of you are probably too young to have lived through the misery years of the late 70s and early 80s when mortgage interest rates were in the teens, and when the price, we had to stand in line to get gas on an even or an odd day. So, you know, when somebody goes to fill up their tank, as Senator Barrasso said, it's more at the tank, and it's not because their tanks are getting any bigger. In my state, the price of gasoline is more than $1 more per gallon. And the White House says they're working on it. Yeah, they better be working on it. But what they're doing for that person who drives to school, drops their kid off, drives to work, goes to the grocery store, goes to visit their parents, maybe goes to an evening activity, they're feeling it every single day. The White House needs to begin to work on it. The president is going to Scotland, as we know, and we know he's going to bring forward the energy plan that he brought forward when he canceled that pipeline on the first day of office. And that's not America first, it's America last. We're going to be behind the line there of the other nations that are going to be there. So as we see coming through my EPW committee, and as John sees in the Energy Committee, it's regulation upon regulation, stifling any kind of production of oil and natural gas, which would alleviate some of this issue. So let's just talk about home heating. We're getting ready to go into the winter months. It's predicted by independent analysis that the cost of home heating will jump 54% this year. So, you know, when I think about my fellow West Virginians, many who are on fixed incomes, when they have to make a choice, and they're going to have to make these choices on how warm they can stay and whether they can either go out or what type of, if they could go to a restaurant or if they can buy enough food really in their own home, they're going to have to make these choices because of the rise, and people have problems paying their bills in those cold winter months anyway. It's predicted that natural gas bills will go up 30%. Most of our state is heated by natural gas, but we're also heated by propane. Propane, the EIA just projected a 54% increase in the cost of propane. So it's going to hurt everywhere. And it's time for the administration to stop selling us talking points and talking to the international community about how we're going to lead when we're leaving so many people behind here at home through the cost of the high energy. So thank you. And next is Senator Langford.
As the president leaves and heads to Scotland to be able to hang out with other world leaders, I'm sure the topic of conversation is going to be how high the energy prices have become in Europe at this point. As European leaders gathered together to drink champagne and eat caviar and to chit-chat about the future of the world, what's happening back at home, both in the United States and in Europe and in multiple other spots, are rapidly advancing prices for energy. What we're seeing in Oklahoma is more than a dollar a gallon increase for gasoline. That hits home. The typical truck is costing about $30 more per fill-up just to be able to fill up now than what they were just a few months ago. Home heating costs with the price of natural gas is dramatically increasing. Now, for states like mine that produce a lot of natural gas and a lot of crude oil, you would think, well, you'd be excited about it. Well, I would tell you there's a lot of production that's coming back online and some jobs that are coming back in, and we're grateful to be able to see that. But they're also families as well, and they're also consumers as well. And even those in the energy market will tell you there is a price that's a better price point to be able to actually do production and to not hurt the consumers the same way, and we're well in excess of that right now. The cause of that's pretty straightforward. The Biden policies that he's put in place and the continual challenge on the capital markets to literally threaten out companies and banks to say, if you do loans of these, we can't tell you how the permitting is going to go. They're literally scaring capital away from pipeline projects, investment projects, additional drilling, while he does his green energy bit to say we won't produce it here in the United States so we can show a better green energy score in the United States, but he'll quietly go to Russia and to OPEC and to say we want you to produce more to bring the price down, but we want to still show the world, quote unquote, we're leading by producing less here. That's absurd, and our consumers are feeling it. For the folks that are driving their vehicles, for the folks that just want to be able to get to work back and forth, get to school back and forth, and not have their pocketbooks hurt even more, they want policies in place that will, yes, focus on the future of how we're going to be good stewards of the world that God gave us, but they also want to know how am I going to be able to feed my family and how am I going to be able to get back to work without having to be able to cut back even more on this. That's what we need to be in dialogue about. Currently, we've got a crisis on our southern border. We've got problems with Afghanistan and all the debris field that is around that at this point. There's so many different issues with the vaccine mandates, and in the middle of all this crisis here, he's taken off and heading to Scotland, and I'm afraid we'll bring back another crisis when he returns back in a few days.
In North Dakota, we're seeing inflation across the board like the rest of the country. So, for example, a gallon of gas since January has gone from $2.27 a gallon to $3.19 a gallon. So more than a 50% increase, almost a dollar increase in the price per gallon. Natural gas has tripled, and you can only imagine what that's going to do to home heating costs with winter coming on. So there's no question that people are feeling this across the board now, and they're going to feel it even more as we go into the winter months. And it's kind of amazing when you think about the fact that North Dakota is an energy powerhouse. We produce an incredible amount of energy, both traditional sources and renewable sources, going back to our Empower North Dakota Energy Plan, which we implemented back in 2001. We produce energy from wind, from solar, from biofuels, and then also coal-fired electric. I think we provide energy to about 8 different states throughout the Midwest, natural gas, and of course oil. And we have gone from 1.5 million barrels a day of oil. Now we're at 1.1 million barrels a day of oil. So that's almost 500,000 barrels a day less here of light sweet crude production in the United States. Why is that? Well, certainly COVID has had, an impact, but it's the policies of this administration and the Democrats that are really impacting our ability to produce more energy here at home. Examples are, first day in office, the president comes in and he cancels a Keystone and makes it harder for us to get pipelines to move energy around our country. And then at the same time, he's taking sanctions off Nord Stream 2 so that Russia can supply gas to Germany and to Europe. Makes no sense whatsoever. This administration puts a moratorium on energy production on federal lands. And even when the court says, no, you can't do that, they slow roll taking it off. And they put up a regulatory blizzard that makes it harder to produce energy in our country. And so then when our energy production goes down, what does the administration do? What's the solution? You ask Putin and Russia for more energy. You ask OPEC for more energy, our adversaries. And that makes sense? That defies common sense. That does not serve the American people, and the American people know it. Not producing that energy here at home means fewer good jobs here at home. It means less energy security, which is a national security issue. It means that our adversaries are strengthened. And it's amazing because think of the irony here. So instead of producing that energy here at home where we have better environmental stewardship, we're getting it from Russia and OPEC where they have worse environmental stewardship. So it even defeats this idea that we're going to somehow do better in terms of CO2 emissions and those kind of things, when the Democrats and this administration ask our adversaries to provide us with energy, rather than empowering our industry here at home to not only provide that energy, but do it with the best environmental stewardship. Senator Ernst.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Hogan. Oh, folks, thanks for coming today. I really appreciate it. I've been hearing from Iowans just all across the state, and they are very, very concerned with a number of issues, as some of my colleagues have already outlined. We have the rising inflation, which has impacted our consumers all across Iowa. And of course, not only gasoline prices, as many of the folks that live in rural areas like I do have to drive a considerable distance to their jobs. They're paying more at the pump. But now in Iowa and many of these other states, we're moving into our cold season. And the cost of their energy is going up radically. So I've heard from a few folks, and I'm going to highlight a couple of those today. So Marlon is from Urbandale, Iowa, and he told me gas is approaching $4 a gallon. $4 a gallon. And some analysts are expecting oil prices to go up to $100 a barrel. I would say that is more than transitory inflation. I don't feel the Fed is being truthful with the American people. I feel we have a real inflation problem and will only get worse. It doesn't take an economist to see that if oil goes over $100 a barrel, a recession is just around the corner. Again, that was Marlon from Urbandale. Deb out in Fairfield, Iowa. Deb said, federal agencies are predicting astronomical energy costs this winter that is completely avoidable. And she also suggested a solution for our administration. Here it is. Stop preventing future energy production here in the United States. Thank you, Deb. That is brilliant. And I hope that President Biden listens to you. I would add, of course, as we've heard, that the president shutting down the Keystone XL pipeline and banning, of course, oil and gas leases on federal land has really only exacerbated the problem. So Marlon and Deb, again, are just two examples of Iowans that are reaching out to me. They're sharing their stories, the impact of these higher prices on their families, on their communities, their neighborhoods. And we know that much of the country is going to be out in the dark, and they are going to be out into the cold this winter if President Biden doesn't change his trajectory. And I will be followed by Senator Scott.
Thanks. So this is the headlines in the this is the Fort Lauderdale paper. Gas prices hit their highest level since 2014. When will we get a break? I mean, you know, you have to feel sorry for poor people on fixed income, because they don't have the ability. Their wages are not staying up with this inflation increase, and so if you you have to fill up your car to get to work, take your kids to school, it's costing you a lot more money. In Florida, most of our electricity is produced by natural gas, and it's a pass-through. So when the price of natural gas goes up, your electricity rates go up. So it's a double whammy. The people that don't have a lot of extra money, living paycheck to paycheck, or people on fixed income, and it's impacting their ability to put food on the table. I watched this growing up. I watched my mom, who didn't have much money, and she had 5 kids she had to try to feed. And when prices of things went up, like gas, it impacted her ability to do what she cared about, make sure she could buy food for her family, buy clothes for the kids, and do all these things. That's going on all across my state right now. You know, what's frustrating is when you're a governor, you're the president, or you're executive, your job is, when there's a problem, you go solve it. You don't comment about it. You go say, okay, you put people together and you say, what do I have to do to go solve this problem? In contrast, this administration just plays the blame game and takes no responsibility. They act like they're commentators sometimes. Joe Biden says he doesn't have a short-term solution. Well, he doesn't have a short-term solution. He doesn't have a long-term solution. And he's not thinking about all the things he's done to cause these prices to go up. So this administration has to start showing up and saying, we're going to stop doing these things that are causing families have a more difficult time putting food on the table. This afternoon, I have a bill that I'm going to take to the floor. It's called the Gas Prices Act. And all it requires is the Energy Information Administration to look at federal regulations and policies and say, these policies are causing oil and gas prices to go up. And then we as Congress, we can say, well, we're going to change that. Even if the administration is not going to do it, we'll do it. So I hope all of my Democrat colleagues will go along with this to make sure we start helping these families that are struggling rather than hurting them. Now we'll hear from Senator Cornyn.
Well, just at a time, as we've seen, where gas prices are going through the roof, natural gas, home heating oil, you name it, we're seeing that the policies of this administration are making things worse, not better, for hardworking American families. And then we're told that President Biden will be flying to Glasgow, Scotland, for a climate change conference, presumably to make more promises about how he's going to further restrict domestic production of fossil fuels here in the United States. Presumably he's going to say, well, we're going to move to more electric vehicles, for example. But I really want to ask people like President Biden from time to time, where do you think electricity comes from? That wall socket over there? Well, it comes from natural gas, it comes from coal, it comes from nuclear power, and it comes from hydro in appropriate circumstances. But they are doing nothing to increase our independence when it comes to being able to produce our own energy here in America. In fact, they are making it harder. They're picking winners and losers. In Europe, they said, sure, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline is just fine. Mr. Putin was happy with that, while he shuts down the Keystone XL pipeline here, making it harder and harder to drill for and to produce more energy here at home. And you've seen the inflation and what the impact of higher prices are having here. Europe is going to have some of the highest electricity costs in recent history. Why? Because they've outlawed nuclear power. They no longer use coal. Meanwhile, I assume China was going to step up and make a commitment, another commitment that they will not keep. They are producing more coal-fired power plant electricity than any other country in the world. They're responsible for 28% of the world's emissions. And of course, if there are emissions being produced in China, it's a global phenomenon. And so it doesn't make any difference what we do to ourselves to restrain our production here if China is going to continue to break its promises and commitments, as will Russia, as will other countries around the world. So we need more affordable and more available energy here at home. It'll produce more jobs. It'll help bring down the prices, and I think make the world less dependent on countries like Saudi Arabia and Russia for our most basic energy needs. Looks like Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, John. Well, thank you, everybody. And I think you're getting the message. From day one, this administration is undertaking policies to drive up energy prices on working families and put American energy workers out of work. You've heard it, restricting production, killing pipelines and infrastructure, envoys like John Kerry going to Wall Street and financial institutions saying, don't invest in American energy, then going to China and getting empty promises from the dictators there. We've heard that he's gone to Asian countries saying, don't buy American natural gas. If you can believe that, an American citizen saying that. So these are the policies. We all know them. It's undisputed. Here's a really important question. Love the media to ask this administration. The Biden administration has a lot of smart people. We know that. Is all of this intentional? Is it their goal to actually drive up energy prices and hurt working families? Is that the goal? I believe it is. Let me give you a little evidence. The president in his town hall last week was really nonchalant about a huge issue hitting American working families. But here's more evidence. Just yesterday, National Climate Advisor and czar Gina McCarthy brushed off concerns about the global energy crunch, slowing climate action. This is an article from Yahoo Finance. It said she was speaking at Yahoo's Finance All Market Summit, and McCarthy said, quote, soaring commodity prices stemming from a surge in energy demand and limited supply should accelerate the move to renewables around the world. Think about that. It sounds like Gina McCarthy wants this pain for Americans to help get to the renewable sector. If this is intentional, I think it is going to be clearly one of the most dramatic, biggest betrayals of working families, working men and women in U.S. history. Please, our friends in the media, next time you see a Biden administration official, ask them, is it your intention to drive up energy prices so, according to Gina McCarthy, quote, we can accelerate the move to renewables, hit hard-working families so you can go to Glasgow and talk to elites about all that you're doing, supposedly, to get to that spot. We are going to be introducing, a number of us, a much better plan, all of the above energy that can reduce global greenhouse gas emissions, empower workers and families, and we certainly hope that all of you pay attention to that, because it's going to be a much better policy for our country, for our economy, for our national security, and we can do it. We've been doing it until the Biden administration came on the scene. Thank you.
Here again, we find ourselves in a self-inflicted crisis by the Biden administration. In addition to the border, Afghanistan, and inflation, we now have an energy crisis as well. Started day one of the Biden administration. Mississippians are paying $3 a gallon for gasoline, and believe you me, I am hearing from them. With winter coming on, this will be devastating to all American families. The prices are headed in the wrong direction. The Biden administration is headed in the wrong direction. This reckless tax and spend, with everything in the world, from natural gas to dirt, being taxed, and now we're having to depend on Russia. This is not going to get any better, and if the Biden administration does not reverse these policies. So they are definitely headed in the wrong direction for the American people. It's pretty sad. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll try to wrap this up. So much has been said. Let me try to summarize briefly. The Biden administration has an energy policy that's bad for American jobs, bad for the American economy, bad for national security, as it makes us more dependent on foreign sources of energy once again, as well as our allies, more dependent on foreign sources of energy. And it's bad for the environment and bad for the climate because, of course, those foreign sources of energy are not as clean as ours. Just to give you some specifics, natural gas produced in Russia and sent by pipeline to other parts of Europe or to Asian countries basically emits about 50% more greenhouse gas emissions than natural gas produced in the United States and shipped. So it's bad for jobs in the economy in the United States. It's bad for national security. And it's bad for the climate. Other than that, it's a hell of a good idea. I mean, so I think someone was being kind. I think it was Dan when he said that the Biden administration has a lot of smart people. I'm not sure. I'd prefer that they be ignorant than be evil. But they do need to be accountable for what's happening. And here's the really sad part in the United States. As a couple of weeks ago, a few weeks ago, the Energy Secretary said, in response to a question from one of your colleagues, that presidents don't set gas prices, markets do. But policy determines market reaction. Every bad policy has a negative reaction in the marketplace. Shrinking of supply while growing demand with an influx of a whole bunch of free money creates inflation. But I think the worst part about inflation, energy inflation, is that on top of all the other inflation, which comes naturally with the same market forces, energy inflation raises the price of everything. Everything that we grow, everything we produce, everything we manufacture, everything that we ship, whether we ship it in or we ship it out. We have a better plan. Senator Sullivan mentioned that we're going to be outlining some things going forward. I think it's important to have solutions to the problems, but right now the problem's obvious, and that is the deliberate policies of the Biden administration in an effort, evidently, to transfer their climate guilt to polluters.
We're happy to take some questions. Yes.
This is all happening while your colleagues on the other side of the aisle are discussing legislation, while we expect the climate provisions to scale back to get Senate Manchin on board. There will be provisions in there aimed at reducing emissions. What is your prediction of the effects of that legislation on the market?
Well, the effect, if they were able to pass that legislation, which I think would be bad across the board, I think you'd see even more expensive prices of things, not just energy, but across the board. It would accelerate inflation, and it's been fun to watch Larry Summers debate Janet Yellen about that very concept, because, of course, Larry Summers is an economist. It was with both the both the Obama as well as the Clinton administration. You'll see a much higher cost of energy. I think you'll have much less reliable energy. We see what happens in California, where they have the highest energy costs in the country, and they have the most unreliable grid. So, you talk about the kind of rolling blackouts they've had there with a lot of their mandates. I think you're going to see higher costs and less reliable energy if they're able to pass what every one of us is here trying to stop.
John,
Leanne. Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
I really want to underscore just how radical this policy direction that the Democrats and Biden are taking. If you look at the history of our country, every president, Democrat, Republican, every Secretary of Energy, every Secretary of the Treasury, by the way, have always been about more energy, energy independence, more resource development, because as was earlier stated, we have the highest standards on the environment of any place in the world. And the fact that, I'll give you one example in my discussions with Janet Yellen during the confirmation process. Will you commit, like every Secretary of the Treasury since Alexander Hamilton, to push for a robust, all-of-the-above energy sector? The Secretary of the Treasury, for the first time in American history, would not commit to that. That's why I voted against her. So this is policy that is a sharp break from any other policy, previous administration in the history of the country. And I think it's really important to underscore that, and we're seeing the negative impacts on so many Americans. But this is radical, and it's a shift from literally any previous administration in U.S. history.
Let me add something as well. In essence, that's a tax and spend policy that will actually increase the inflation that we're seeing right now. And so that's a problem because, think about it. Supposedly the administration is saying, well, we're not going to tax anybody that makes less than $400,000. Well, that's ridiculous. Inflation is a tax on everybody, and it hits low-income people the hardest. So that tax and spend bill will increase inflation even further, creating even more impact on people who are working people that are really struggling with all of these inflation costs now, and like we've talked about, these energy costs. I was doing a radio show not too long ago, and one of the callers called in and said, winter's coming on. We're in North Dakota, winter's coming on. He says, what am I supposed to do? Should I buy food or heat my home? But it's looking like that's the challenge I'm going to have. And that tax and spend bill will just make it worse. And I believe the American people know that.
Does it get cold in North Dakota, John?
It sure does in the wintertime.
Leanne.
So it's clear that inflation and cost is your immediate concern. Is emissions overall also a concern, and what is the right balance then?
Yeah, well, we believe. Oh,
Yeah, so we have great solutions.
we can get into all. Yeah, we believe that you can actually protect the environment without punishing the economy. I don't think this administration understands or believes that. We have remarkable, successful programs with carbon capture, sequestration. We all believe climate change is real. We believe that mankind is certainly contributing to that. And we also believe that if China and India don't do things, even if we were to go to zero emissions in the United States, the global emissions continue to go up. The U.S. emissions have been dropping for the last 15 years by a number of things that we've been doing. And we also believe that nuclear energy has to be a part of this mix. We needed all of the energy supply needs. The needs continue to go up across the board. We need oil, gas, coal, uranium for nuclear power. We need the wind. We need the solar. We have all of those things in Wyoming and the hydro. So we want to make sure the American people have affordable energy, and we want to make energy as clean as we can, as fast as we can, and do it in ways that don't increase costs for American families.
The Democrats are proposing perhaps hundreds of billions of dollars of tax credits for renewables in multiple ways. Do you think that that is one of the paths forward? I know you don't agree with everything, but is that a viable option?
What we need to do is an all of the above energy situation. What they're trying to do really is eliminate multiple forms of energy that we have here. There is a war on carbon-based fuels. And that's the target that Joe Biden drew on the back of American energy the day he came into office with killing the Keystone XL pipeline. You listen to his speeches, and well as what he's done with the banning the production out of Alaska, banning the moratorium on oil and gas on public lands. Yes.
Yeah, can I just say
Oh, sure.
something here, because this falls a lot into my state, but also the EPW committee. First of all, we have a surface transportation bill that we passed out of that committee, and a lot of these folks are on that committee. It was unanimous. In that committee, it's the first time we've ever had a climate chapter in that committee. To be able to figure out how to reduce emissions, which the biggest emitter of emissions is not the power sector, it's the transportation sector. So to begin to work on that together. We also need, and John mentioned CCUS, we have a 45Q tax credit that will help incentivize the capture of carbon dioxide, reusing it for either enhanced oil recovery or other things. But we can't get the infrastructure in to move the carbon through the pipelines because this administration is so anti-pipeline. So our solutions, I think, will lead to fewer emissions and have over the years. But we have to have the infrastructure to move forward on these things, and we're stymied at that as well.
And if I can just add, like I said, we're going to be rolling out an agenda that we believe addresses these issues, but it's building on what is already working. You know, the Secretary of Energy was in North Dakota recently, and she said that the United States doesn't have the moral authority in terms of our policies to stand up to China on these issues. That's absolutely incorrect. From 2005 to present, the United States has reduced our emissions by almost 15%. That's more than any other major economy in the world by far. The estimates of increasing global greenhouse gas emissions globally are almost going to come 100% from non-OECD countries. So you look at where we are declining dramatically. Why? Because of the revolution in natural gas. That is a fact. So a big part of our plan is to continue to focus on what is working. If we are exporting more LNG to countries in Asia, India, China, Japan, Korea, we're already exporting to all of those countries right now. A dramatic increase in those exports of clean burning American natural gas will have a dramatic impact on lowering global greenhouse gas emissions. That's a fact. So these are the kind of things we think we can do in terms of all of the above, but to address the global greenhouse gas emissions issues, we just think it's much more effective, and it's already working. Already working. We just need to build on it.
Can I just, one point along those lines, Leon, because you ask a really important question. It's easy, right now it's easy to be against everything Biden's doing because it's so awful. But if we would focus less on getting to zero in the United States, zero greenhouse gas emissions or zero, net zero by 2050, and focus more on bringing down global emissions, say 40%, and putting the pressure, whether it's through trade deals and geopolitical, pressures and carrot stick things. If we bring down global emissions 40% by 2050, it's a much greater reduction than the United States unilaterally disarming our own economy. Just one example. I think we focus more on the global problem and not so much on our unilateral disarmament.
And we'll have 4 answers for you, too. Go ahead. Well, this shows the passion on this issue. I mean, we had 10 senators that showed up, and 10 of them stayed for the beginning of the questioning, and then we still have 4 here. But this will be the last question because we're in the final minutes of the third vote.
Yeah, and kind of going off what Senator Kramer said, you guys have lamented that President Biden is going to this Glasgow conference and what he might say at the conference. In the world where the president took your advice, what message do you want him to deliver at the conference, and what would be a positive outcome of this in your eyes?
Well, it would be a message that I had just talked about in the question to Leanne, which is we want to make energy as clean as we can, as fast as we can, and do it in ways that don't raise costs for consumers. And that we respect the environment, have a responsibility for the environment. And we can do this by protecting the environment without punishing the economy. We all believe that, and that's the focus. Thanks.
Vote on.
Okay.